My name is Madison Hayes, and I'm 32 years old. When I tell you that what happened at my sister's wedding still makes headlines in our business community, I'm not exaggerating. To understand how it all unraveled, you need to step back with me to that morning at the Grandview Hotel. 8 o'clock sharp, 3 hours before the ceremony, I walked into a ballroom dripping with white roses and gold accents. A scene straight from one of those bridal magazines Sophia had dreamed of since she was a teenager. I'd quietly written a check for $50,000 to help make that dream possible, though no one would ever speak of it. Madison, finally, my mother said the instant she spotted me. Her eyes traveled down my navy silk dress, lips curving in disapproval. That outfit. Couldn't you have chosen something more feminine? You look like you're heading to a board meeting, not your sister's wedding. I smoothed the fabric at my hip, inhaling slowly. Elegant, appropriate, a silhouette that belonged in any boardroom, but also one I chose because I felt powerful in it. Good morning to you too, Mom. She ignored me, of course. Now Sophia, she continued, gesturing toward my sister in her gown. She looks radiant, doesn't she? A proper bride. She glows. The comparison wasn't new. For 32 years I'd been labeled the difficult daughter, too ambitious, too independent, too masculine. Sophia was the princess, the golden child, the one who ticked every box of their definition of perfection. My father's voice rang out from across the room. Madison, can you check the seating arrangements? And don't reorganize everything like you always do. The chart was a disaster. Divorced couples placed shoulder to shoulder. Business rivals within elbow's reach. I wanted to fix it. Instead, I bit my tongue. What would be the point? In this family, initiative was rebellion. What they didn't know, what I'd never told them, was that I wasn't just some mid-level employee in a cubicle farm. I was vice president of development at Hayes Capital, overseeing our Asia-Pacific expansion. 10 years of 80-hour weeks and sleepless red-eye flights had carved out a career most people only dream of. But here, in this ballroom, that reality dissolved into their narrative. Madison, the unmarried daughter who failed to live up to traditional expectations. Dad appeared beside me as I straightened a crooked centerpiece. Family comes first. Madison, you'll understand when you have your own family, if you ever settle down. His voice carried just enough for surrounding relatives to hear. The jab landed the way he intended. My unmarried status at 32 outweighed every professional achievement I'd earned. Richard, leave her alone. Aunt Patricia chimed in with a smirk. Not everyone can be as lucky as Sophia, finding true love so young. I focused on the flowers, willing my hands to remain steady. Whispers swirled. Still no ring on Madison's finger. Poor Carol. At least she'll have Sophia's grandchildren soon. My cousin Derek raised his glass from across the room. Hey Madison, maybe if you spent less time in boardrooms and more time in normal rooms, you'd have a +1 today. Laughter rippled. I wanted to retort. About the men who couldn't handle my success. About the choice to remain single until I found someone worthy. But silence was safer. She's always been too picky. My mother explained sweetly to a nearby guest. Too particular for her own good. It was always the same story. Then Aunt Sally leaned closer during the pre-ceremony mingling. So, Madison, how's that little apartment in the city? Must be cozy. It's a penthouse. Actually. The group around us laughed. Aunt Sally clutched her pearls, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. A penthouse? Oh, Madison, your imagination. She likes to exaggerate, Sophia added, her voice light, her smile dazzling for the cameras. Last year she told us she was buying a Tesla. Can you imagine? I did buy a Tesla. It was parked right outside. But I just smiled. Uncle Tom shook his head with a chuckle. Nothing wrong with a modest apartment. Not everyone can afford luxury. Kiddo. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed. A notification from my building's concierge about tomorrow's delivery to my 45th floor penthouse. 4,500 square feet. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls overlooking the city. Paid in cash after the Singapore deal. Architectural Digest had featured it last month. Proof that I'd made it without their approval. Proof they refused to acknowledge. You're right, Uncle Tom, I murmured. No shame in living within your means. Sophia laughed. the crystalline sound she'd perfected over the years. See? Madison's learning to be realistic. The irony was almost poetic. I sipped champagne, staring out the window at the skyline where my tower cut into the horizon. 10 years. That's how long it took me to climb from junior analyst to vice president. 10 years of deals splashed across the Financial Times. That penthouse wasn't a home, it was proof. Proof that the girl they belittled had carved something extraordinary. And yet, later that night, they would try to rip it from me. I felt my phone vibrate again. This time it was Marcus Chen, my CEO, mentor, and, unbeknownst to my family, holder of 40% of my father's company. In town early, might swing by after dinner with investors. Call if you need me. The timing sent a chill down my spine. I typed back quickly, all good, just a wedding. But something inside whispered that nothing about this day would remain, just a wedding. Around me, relatives chuckled, gossiping about Sophia's glow and my supposed failures. None of them realized I carried more influence in that ballroom than most of them would in their lifetimes. None of them knew that in my employment contract sat a clause drafted after recent corporate scandals. Protecting executives from family coercion. Clause 15.3. If pressured to surrender compensation assets under duress, Hayes Capital could intervene. Marcus had insisted. I'd laughed then, assuming my family was difficult, not dangerous. I wasn't laughing anymore. As the band rehearsed and photographers snapped test shots, I glanced once more at my phone. Another buzz. This time from the wedding's freelance live streamer hired by the bridal magazine. He'd tagged me in a post, behind the scenes at the wedding of the season. I didn't know then how that tiny red, live, indicator would become the fuse on a powder keg. I tucked the phone into my clutch, straightened my shoulders, and prepared myself. I thought I was only here to witness Sophia's fairy tale. I didn't yet realize I was about to become the headline. The ceremony itself unfolded with flawless precision. White roses cascaded from tall crystal vases. A harpist played softly, and the guests filled the ballroom with murmurs of admiration. Every angle was being captured, photographers, videographers, and that freelance live streamer who had perched himself near table 6 with his tripod and phone. His lens swept across the room again and again, feeding real-time images to an online audience who, unbeknownst to me, would soon grow from a few dozen friends of the groom to tens of thousands of strangers around the world. For a brief moment, I let myself get swept into the beauty of it all. Sophia walked down the aisle like something out of a movie, radiant and glowing. My father looked proud, my mother radiant, the guests suitably charmed. But beneath the golden lighting and perfect smiles, I sensed something darker brewing. My father had been checking his phone obsessively since the early afternoon, his eyes narrowing as though rehearsing words in his head. My mother's hand never left her clutch, where I knew she'd stored notes for a speech. That should have been the clue. But I told myself it was just nerves. After all, parents love making toasts at weddings. Hours passed, courses of food served, champagne poured, the band striking up one jubilant tune after another. Finally, just as I was beginning to think maybe I had overestimated my parents' capacity for cruelty, the sound of a spoon against a champagne glass rang through the air. Ladies and gentlemen, my father boomed, his voice commanding attention as he stood tall at the head table. Before we continue the celebration, Carol and I want to give Sophia and Brian something truly special. The room quieted. Cameras swiveled. The live streamer angled his phone directly at the head table. Red indicator glowing. My heart sank. As you all know, Dad continued, his eyes sweeping the audience. Family means everything to us. There is nothing we wouldn't do for our children's happiness. That's why tonight, we are thrilled to announce that Madison, his gaze pinned me like a spotlight, has graciously agreed to gift Sophia and Brian her city penthouse as a wedding present. The room erupted in applause. People gasped, clapped, some even stood to cheer. Faces turned toward me, expectant, delighted. Sophia clasped her hands to her chest in mock surprise, though the faint curve of her lips betrayed her knowledge. Brian wrapped an arm around her, grinning as though Christmas had come early. I sat frozen, champagne glass half raised. The world tilted. They had planned this. An ambush in front of 200 witnesses. Designed so refusal would make me look monstrous. Madison, come up here, Dad called, beckoning me toward the microphone. Let's have the whole family together for this special moment. The clapping continued, swelling like a wave meant to crush me. At table 12, my boss's wife sat wide-eyed. At table 8, 3 of my father's biggest clients leaned forward, phones discreetly recording. Scattered through the crowd were colleagues, investors, acquaintances from the business community. This wasn't just family, this was my entire professional world. I stood slowly, setting down my glass with deliberate care. I'm sorry. What? My voice was calm, but it cut through the room. Dad's smile flickered. Your penthouse, sweetheart, for Sophia and Brian. This wasn't discussed with me, I said evenly. A ripple of whispers followed, hissing like snakes through the ballroom. Don't be selfish on your sister's wedding day, Dad warned. His tone sharpened for the microphone so the entire audience could hear. Dad, I said, forcing every ounce of restraint into my voice. This is inappropriate. We can discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss, Mom interjected, snatching the microphone with theatrical authority. It's a wedding gift from the family. It's my property, I said clearly, and I haven't agreed to anything. The gasps grew louder. Fragments of disapproval echoed from table to table. How could she? So selfish. It's just property. Sophia's eyes welled with perfectly timed tears. Madison, she whispered into her mic, her voice trembling for maximum effect. I thought you loved me enough to help start my marriage off right. Her words landed like daggers, sharp and calculated. Around us, the comments started flying. Come on, it's family, Aunt Sally called. She doesn't even have a family to fill it. Uncle Tom added. Be reasonable, my cousin Derek shouted. With your big job, you can buy another place. Aunt Patricia chimed. The pressure was relentless, voices battering me from every direction. I felt the walls closing in, every eye demanding compliance. My pulse pounded in my ears. That's generous of you to assume, I replied, my tone controlled. But my financial situation isn't up for public discussion. Mom sneered, her microphone catching every venomous syllable. Everything's about money with you. Your sister's happiness should matter more than property. If Sophia's happiness depends on taking what's mine, I said steadily, perhaps we should examine that. Gasps again. Someone booed. The wedding photographer's flash exploded like lightning across the ballroom. Through the chaos, my phone buzzed inside my clutch. I glanced down. 3 missed calls from MC. Then a text. Saw the live stream. On standby. Live stream. My eyes darted across the room. There, on table 6, Brian's younger brother's phone stood propped up. Red light blinking. He was broadcasting everything to Facebook Live. The comments were rolling in faster than he could read. Hearts. Angry emojis. Shocked reactions. Apparently, the ambush wasn't just humiliating me in front of 200 guests. It was humiliating me in front of the entire internet. Mom's face turned crimson. Madison, put your phone away. This is family time. Apparently, I said, nodding toward the streaming device. It's also public entertainment. The groom's brother scrambled to grab his phone. But the damage was done. Already, people online were screen recording, sharing, commenting. A wedding meant to elevate Sophia's status was turning into a live case study of coercion and entitlement. I tapped back a reply to Marcus under the table. Wait for my signal. Above the applause and whispers, Sophia pressed her mic closer, her voice cracking just right. All this fuss over a piece of property. I just thought my sister loved me enough. And the crowd, like sheep, bleated their sympathy. I stayed standing, hands at my sides, spine straight. I had faced CEOs who tried to chew me alive in negotiation rooms. Men twice my age who mistook my youth for weakness. I wasn't going to collapse here. Not in front of these people. Not in front of strangers watching live. The penthouse is not available, I said once more, my voice clear, unwavering, final. The ballroom held its breath. The livestream's viewer count ticked upward in glowing red numbers. And then, everything spiraled into the moment I'll never forget. The ballroom was suffocating in its silence. A thick, Heavy pause before something irrevocable snapped. My mother's face twisted, a storm of rage and humiliation flashing across her features. She had been cornered, not just by me but by the hundreds of eyes and cameras that had witnessed her plan unravel. And when people like her lose control, they lash out. She descended from the head table with a determination that made even the band stop mid-note. The sequins of her beaded gown glinted like shards of glass under the chandeliers as she clutched the microphone so tightly her knuckles whitened. I could see the vein pulsing at her temple, her steps echoing across the marble floor. "Madison Hayes," she thundered, her voice booming through the speakers. "You will not ruin this day. You will not embarrass this family." I didn't flinch. I'm not the one creating a scene. Mother. The room inhaled sharply as though bracing for an earthquake. My mother's eyes narrowed into slits. "We raised you better than this. We gave you everything. You gave Sophia everything," I said softly, but the microphone carried my words across the vast ballroom. "I earned what I have." The crowd stirred. Aunts and uncles exchanged whispers. Guests from the business community leaned closer, their phones tilted to capture every word. "You ungrateful," Mom bit off the insult, remembering the audience. Then, in a voice coated with honey but dripping venom, she cooed, "Sweetheart, just give your sister the keys. It's such a small thing." "No." The word dropped like a gavel, sharp and final. Her face contorted. Disbelief, rage, the terror of a carefully constructed image shattering. She closed the final 3 feet between us. Perfume overwhelming, eyes burning with decades of resentment. And then it happened. The slap cracked through the ballroom like a gunshot. Her hand connected with my cheek so hard my head snapped sideways. The microphone picked up the sound, amplifying it until it ricocheted off the mirrored walls. For a moment, no one breathed. My diamond earring, the one I'd bought for myself after closing the Singapore deal, flew off, spinning in a glittering arc before landing with a delicate ping on the marble floor 10 feet away. 200 guests gasped in unison. The harpist dropped her bow. The photographer's camera stopped clicking. Even the children at table 15 froze mid-giggle. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the ragged sound of my mother's breathing as she stood with her hand still suspended in the air. I didn't move. I didn't touch my burning cheek. I stood there, steady, letting the silence scream louder than any words could. In that frozen moment, time seemed to fracture. I remembered late nights at my desk, falling asleep over spreadsheets. I remembered the endless flights across time zones, the exhaustion of deals that built empires. I remembered being told I was too much, too ambitious, too masculine. I remembered all of it, and realized none of it had prepared me for this. Yet somehow everything had. Slowly, deliberately, I turned toward the marble floor. Each click of my heels echoed like a drumbeat in the cavernous hall. I crouched, retrieved my earring, and with meticulous care, fastened it back onto my ear. The act was small, almost mundane, but in that silence it felt monumental, like reclaiming something she had tried to slap out of me. I straightened, smoothed my navy silk dress, and looked directly at my mother. Her hand had finally dropped, the microphone still clutched between trembling fingers. She stared at me, half defiant, half horrified at what she'd just done in front of 200 witnesses, and countless more online. "Excuse me," I said, my voice even, measured, deliberate. Then I turned toward the head table. "Congratulations, Sophia. I hope your marriage brings you joy." I reached for my clutch, slid the strap over my wrist, and began walking toward the exit. Not rushing, not running, just walking, each step precise, each breath calm. Behind me, the ballroom erupted. "Madison," Dad barked into the microphone, his voice booming with desperation. "Madison, wait." But I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. The chaos behind me blurred into a cacophony of raised voices, scraping chairs, muffled sobs, and the frantic clicking of cameras desperate to catch every second of the scandal. When I pushed through the grand double doors, the sound cut off like a switch flipped, replaced by the muted hush of the hallway. I exhaled a long breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding, the sting in my cheek pulsing with every heartbeat. I pulled out my phone. Marcus answered on the first ring. "Madison?" His voice was steady, clipped, the tone he used in boardrooms when billions were at stake. Green light, I said simply. There was no pause. Understood. How long do you need? 45 minutes to get home. Are you okay? I pressed the ice-cold screen against my cheek for a second. The throb grounding me. Nothing that won't heal. Execute the contingency. Already mobilizing legal. Madison? His voice softened, a rare breach in his armor. Now I mean, are you hurt? Just my pride. And my cheek. Then listen carefully. By the time you get home, the ballroom won't be the same. Bring clause 15.3 to mind. Tonight it saves you. I closed my eyes, leaning against the cool marble wall outside the ballroom. Make sure you bring the shareholder agreement. The one Dad never actually read. With pleasure, Marcus said. I hung up as the elevator doors opened. The mirrored walls reflected a woman with a reddened cheek. Eyes sharp, spine straight. A woman humiliated in front of the world. Yes, but also one about to change the game. I stepped inside, the doors sliding shut, sealing me away from the chaos of the ballroom. That slap, heard by 200 people and streamed to who knows how many online, had just detonated the Hayes family myth. But it had also ignited something else, a reckoning decades overdue. As the elevator descended, I whispered to myself, they have no idea what's coming. The elevator doors closed behind me with a metallic thud, shutting out the echoes of chaos from the ballroom. For the first time that day, I was alone, the sting in my cheek throbbing like a brand. My phone buzzed again. Marcus. On my way. 2 associates with me. Briefcases ready. The message was efficient. No wasted words. He knew exactly what tonight had become. A corporate battlefield disguised as a wedding reception. By the time I reached my penthouse 45 minutes later, the city stretched below me. Glittering and indifferent, I pressed an ice pack against my cheek. Traded my navy silk dress for jeans and a soft sweater. Armor replaced by comfort. My sanctuary wrapped itself around me. The floor-to-ceiling windows glowing with reflected light. Here, I wasn't the disappointing daughter. I wasn't the overshadowed sister. I was Madison Hayes, vice president of Hayes Capital. Survivor of a public ambush that was about to backfire spectacularly. My phone buzzed again. Marcus. Entering the building now. I pictured it as clearly as if I were watching. Marcus Chen stepping into that ballroom in his tailored Armani suit. Flanked by 2 lawyers carrying black briefcases. His reputation preceded him. Forbes had profiled him 3 times. The man controlled empires with the flick of a pen. And tonight, he carried not just his own authority but the weight of Hayes Capital itself. Another text came through, this time from an unknown number. Brian's brother. Your dad looks like he's about to faint. This Chinese guy just said your name and something about partnership agreements. Your mom literally screamed. Who is this guy? I smirked. Someone who protects his investments. I typed back. Then I muted the thread. Minutes later, my phone rang. Marcus's voice filled my living room. Crisp. Commanding. Carrying the weight of a man who had spent his life turning boardrooms into war zones. Madison, you're on speaker. The entire ballroom can hear you. In the background, silence crackled. 200 guests. Every fork and flute of champagne abandoned. Waiting. Richard, Marcus said, his tone velvet and steel. I need to clarify something for everyone present. Madison Hayes is not merely some middle manager. As you've implied, she is vice president of development at Hayes Capital, overseeing our Asia-Pacific expansion. A wave of gasps echoed through the line. I could almost see my father's face paling, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. The Singapore deal that netted 40 million? Madison led that. Marcus continued. The Tokyo office, now our most profitable branch? Madison built it from the ground up. The Samsung partnership your company begged for a slice of? Madison negotiated every detail. You're lying. My mother shrieked. Mrs. Hayes, Marcus said smoothly, your daughter is one of the most valuable executives in this city. The penthouse you attempted to seize was part of her executive compensation package. A package that includes very specific protections. What protections? My father croaked. The protections that activate when anyone attempts to coerce her into surrendering corporate assets. Marcus replied. his voice slicing through the air. And according to the live stream, now viewed over 20,000 times, that is exactly what happened here tonight. I closed my eyes, letting the words wash over me. 20,000. In less than an hour. A private family ambush had become a viral scandal. This is family business. My father sputtered. The moment you made it public. Marcus snapped. You made it my business. Madison, are you still on the line? I'm here, I said, my voice steady. Would you like to press charges for assault? The ballroom fell silent again. I could hear chairs creaking as people shifted uncomfortably. Let me explain. Marcus continued. The livestream shows clear assault and attempted coercion. That triggers Clause 15.3 of our shareholder agreement, the one about moral turpitude and conduct unbecoming of leadership. What are you talking about? Dad's voice cracked. Desperate. Page 47 of the agreement you signed 5 years ago. Marcus said, papers rustling in the background. I have the document here. If necessary, I can call an emergency board meeting within 24 hours. With my 40% and the Jensen Trust's 15%. That's majority control. You do the math. I could imagine the panic spreading across my father's face. His realization dawning too late. He'd never read the fine print. He'd never believed consequences could reach him. This is extortion, Mom screeched. No, Mrs. Hayes, Marcus replied, his voice like ice. Extortion was demanding your daughter's property in front of 200 witnesses. This is consequence management. Madison, Dad pleaded, his voice breaking. Tell him to stop, please. This is going too far. Too far? My voice carried through Marcus's phone. Steady and cold, like slapping your daughter at her sister's wedding wasn't too far? A murmur rippled through the ballroom. Voices whispering, she's right. You can't destroy our family business over this. Dad's desperation rose to a shout. I'm not destroying anything, I said calmly. I'm protecting my assets and my dignity. Marcus is protecting his investment. If your behavior threatens that investment, that's on you. Someone whispered near the microphone. The video is everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, local news picked it up. Marcus didn't miss a beat. Here's what's going to happen. Richard, you have 48 hours to issue a public apology to Madison. A real one. Acknowledge her achievements. Acknowledge her right to her own property. Carol, you'll do the same, and you will stay away from Madison permanently. Or I exercise my options as a shareholder. Your company needs my capital for expansion. Without it, you'll face bankruptcy within 6 months. This is my daughter's wedding. My mother wailed. And you chose to turn it into a stage for coercion. Marcus replied smoothly. I'm leaving now, but these documents stay with you. Richard, read them, understand them, and remember, Madison isn't alone. She has the full weight of Hayes Capital behind her. There was silence, then a single sob from Sophia. Madison, she cried into the microphone, voice trembling. How could you do this to me? I answered clearly, my words echoing through the line. I didn't do anything to you. Sophia, I simply refused to give you my home. Everything else, the ambush, the slap, the humiliation, that was Mom and Dad's choice. The penthouse is mine, bought with my money, earned through my work. If you want one, I suggest you earn it. Her sob turned sharp, her mask cracking. You're cruel. No, I said, I'm just done being your sacrifice. The line went quiet. Then Marcus spoke one last time. The papers are served. 48 hours. Public apology. Or the board convenes. Madison, I'll see you Monday. The call disconnected. I lowered the phone, staring out at the glittering skyline. My cheek still burned, but for the first time in years, my chest felt light. The invisible daughter had just become the one holding all the cards. Back in my penthouse, I poured myself a glass of water. The ice pack pressed to my cheek, still stinging from the force of my mother's slap. My phone refused to stay silent. Notifications lit up the screen like fireworks. The live stream, which I'd assumed a handful of people would see, had exploded beyond comprehension. Brian's younger brother had no idea what he unleashed when he propped that phone on table 6. Wedding slap goes viral. Entitled parents demand daughter's penthouse at reception. Vice president refuses to be bullied in front of 200 guests. Headlines were already circulating on Twitter and Instagram. Clips of me calmly saying, "The penthouse is not available," were being shared with captions like, "Boundaries 101," and "Queen Energy." Within 90 minutes, the hashtag wedding slap was trending in 3 cities. But virality cuts both ways. Group chats exploded across the business community. At 9:47 p.m., a text came in from Jim Patterson of Patterson Industries, one of my father's biggest clients. "Richard, I'm disturbed by what I just witnessed. We need to reconsider our contract." Minutes later, David Kim of Kim Electronics messaged, "I don't do business with men who hit their daughters." Contract terminated. Sarah Williams of Williams Logistics chimed in, "This behavior is incompatible with our partnership. Effective immediately. We are pulling out." That was 3 multi-million-dollar contracts gone in under an hour. And the fallout didn't stop with contracts. The bridal magazine that had featured Sophia's wedding on its cover preview sent an urgent email, "Given recent events, we may need to pull our piece pending further review." Even the harpist had posted a cryptic note on Facebook, "Some gigs leave scars you don't see." I leaned against the glass wall of my sanctuary, watching the lights flicker below. The irony wasn't lost on me. My parents had orchestrated this grand performance to elevate Sophia. But instead, the world was fixated on me, the daughter they'd always dismissed. Marcus texted again. 3 more clients have reached out. He's bleeding contracts. Madison. I typed back, "Good. Maybe they'll finally see the cost of trying to humiliate me." Down in the ballroom, I imagined the scene. Guests whispering in horror. Phones buzzing with alerts as the story spread faster than any toast or dance. Brian's family, once giddy with the promise of a penthouse inheritance, now pale-faced, realizing their son was marrying into scandal. His mother typed furiously in the family group chat, "We're leaving. This is disgraceful." His father added bluntly, "The wedding is on hold until we know what kind of family we're joining." Sophia must have been spiraling. All those years of being the princess, the golden child, now overshadowed by a single slap and the internet's unforgiving spotlight. Her carefully curated glow replaced by blotchy cheeks and crocodile tears that no longer fooled anyone. Meanwhile, strangers on social media were dissecting every frame. Someone had clipped the exact second my earring hit the marble floor and looped it with dramatic sound effects. Another account compared my calm walk to the exit with runway models. Comments poured in. "She's ice cold. That's composure money can't buy. Family doesn't mean ownership." And through it all, Marcus's voice echoed in my mind. 48 hours. Public apology or the board convenes. The countdown had already started. At 10:15, my assistant called. "Boss, 5 headhunters have already reached out asking if you're considering new opportunities." Apparently standing up to toxic family is very in right now. Her laughter was soft, incredulous. "Also, LinkedIn wants to feature you in a leadership resilience panel." I almost laughed too. The absurdity of it. I had been slapped, humiliated, ambushed in front of the world, and somehow, my stock was rising. But my father's empire? It was collapsing by the hour. I sipped my water, scrolling through messages. Sophia had called 15 times. Her texts flooding in one after another. "You ruined my life." Brian's family thinks we're toxic. The honeymoon's cancelled. "I hate you." I didn't respond. My mother, ever predictable, took to Facebook with a furious rant. Ungrateful daughter chooses money over family. Destroyed her sister's wedding. Brainwashed by corporate greed. Screenshots of her post spread instantly. Most commenters siding against her. Now we know where Madison's strength came from. Surviving that woman. Narcissist alert. Classic golden child versus scapegoat dynamic. Dad's message was different. Short. Desperate. "We need to talk. Please." I set my phone down. Poured myself another glass. And let the city's skyline reflect back at me. For once, I didn't feel invisible. For once, my boundaries weren't something to be mocked but something to be admired. Even celebrated. Down in the ballroom, chaos reigned. Up here, in my sanctuary, clarity finally settled. The empire was shifting. And this time, I wasn't the one on the losing end. By Monday morning, The dust from the wedding had transformed into a full-blown storm. I walked into Hayes Capital's headquarters with my cheek still faintly bruised, though makeup dulled the redness. The lobby receptionist gave me a look of quiet respect. Even she had seen the video. Everyone had. It was impossible to avoid. Clips of my mother's slap had been replayed on morning shows, dissected in online think pieces, and turned into memes. Headlines ranged from sensational to analytical. When family becomes a liability in business. The slap heard around the world of finance. Boundaries over blood. Marcus summoned me to his office without preamble. The glass walls of his corner suite overlooked the city like a throne room. He gestured for me to sit, sliding a stack of papers across the polished wood table. The board met this morning. Unanimous vote. You're being promoted to Senior Vice President of Global Operations. Effective immediately. I blinked. I got slapped at a wedding. That impressed them? Marcus smiled faintly, the kind of smile that never softened his eyes. You stood your ground under massive social pressure. You protected company assets. You didn't flinch when it would have been easier to fold. That's leadership. And leadership is what this company needs more than ever. The raise that came with the promotion was staggering: salary, stock options, and a discretionary bonus large enough to buy another penthouse if I wanted. I didn't. The one I had was enough. Not just in square footage but in meaning. Instead, I donated the bonus to a women's shelter. One that specialized in helping victims of family abuse escape toxic households. It felt like the right way to turn pain into protection. My father, meanwhile, had 48 hours to make good on Marcus's ultimatum. At the 47th hour, a carefully crafted statement appeared on the company's website and across his social media accounts. I apologize to my daughter, Madison Hayes, for my inappropriate behavior at a recent family event. I acknowledge her professional achievements and her right to her own property. This matter is closed. It was stiff, soulless, clearly drafted by lawyers, but it was still an apology. And it was public. That was all Marcus required to keep from convening the board. My mother refused outright. Instead, she doubled down, launching a social media tirade. She called me selfish, ungrateful, corrupted by corporate culture. Screenshots of her rants were shared widely, often captioned with comments like, "Now we know where the real toxicity lies. Narcissist spotted. Madison deserved better than this woman." Her words, meant to wound me, only exposed her to the scrutiny she had once wielded so freely against me. Sophia, for her part, unraveled. Brian's family had cancelled the honeymoon. Their engagement was now on shaky ground. Counseling mandated by his parents before they would consider proceeding. Sophia texted me once, "You ruined everything. Brian's family thinks we're toxic. They want us to go to therapy." My reply was simple: "They're not wrong." Her response, predictably, was, "I hate you." Extended family split into factions. Some declared family must always come first, regardless of circumstance. Others messaged privately, admitting they had long suspected the imbalance between me and Sophia. My cousin Derek, the one who had mocked me about being single, sent an unexpected apology. "I didn't know they treated you like that all the time." "I'm sorry." Aunt Patricia, my mother's own sister, wrote, "She was wrong. I'm proud of you for standing up." But the most surprising message came from Brian himself. "I didn't know about the penthouse ambush. I would have stopped it if I could. Sophia needs to grow up. What your mother did was assault. I'm sorry you went through that." His honesty startled me. For the first time, I saw a man who might not be willing to tolerate the entitlement that had defined my sister's world. In the weeks that followed, Dad's company bled clients. 6 contracts vanished in total. The expansion project he had planned for 2 years collapsed without Marcus's capital backing. He aged a decade in 6 months. Through mutual contacts, I learned he had started therapy. Too little, too late, but something nonetheless. My mother dug deeper into her victim narrative. Every rant, every bitter post, every tearful retelling of how ungrateful Madison ruined Sophia's wedding, only served to harden public opinion against her. Most people had seen the video. They knew the truth. And Sophia? Her marriage lasted 4 months. Therapy peeled back more than the veneer of a ruined wedding. Entitlement, immaturity, and a refusal to take responsibility destroyed what little foundation her relationship had. When the divorce papers were filed, she texted me again. "I hope you're happy. You got what you wanted." My reply was curt. "I got what I earned." There's a difference. Through it all, Hayes Capital thrived. Under my leadership, the Asia-Pacific branches expanded further. We closed 2 new deals in Seoul and Jakarta, both praised in industry circles. Marcus became more than a boss, he became the mentor my father had never been. Over coffee one morning, he told me, "The best revenge isn't loud. It's living well without them." And he was right. Because in the end, the slap that was meant to humiliate me became my turning point. My shame became my spotlight. Their ambush became their undoing. And my silence, the refusal to scream, cry, or lash out, became my weapon. The invisible daughter had finally stepped into full view. Not as a victim, but as a force. 6 months later, the city no longer buzzed about the slap. Headlines had moved on, but the ripple effects were still shaping lives. Every morning, I stood in my penthouse, coffee in hand, watching the sun climb above the skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The bruises on my cheek had long faded, but the memory of that moment, the silence, the sting, the collective gasp, remained etched in me like a scar you can't see but never forget. I had made peace with the fact that my birth family was no longer part of my daily existence. Their numbers were blocked, their faces absent from my feeds. Building security kept a list of names permanently banned from my building. My parents' names topped that list. James, the longtime doorman, had quietly said one morning, "Miss Hayes, I saw the video. Good for you. My daughter went through something similar. Family isn't always family, you know." His words stayed with me more than I expected. At Hayes Capital, my promotion to Senior VP of Global Operations opened doors I never imagined. I now managed teams across 12 countries, negotiated contracts worth billions, and sat at tables where my father had always dreamed of being invited. The irony wasn't lost on me. The daughter he once dismissed as too masculine, too ambitious, was now the very person shaping markets he could only watch collapse. Forbes placed me on their 40 under 40 list. Not mentioning the wedding scandal at all, just focusing on my strategies for expansion and the leadership resilience that caught their eye. The article became a quiet victory, a rewriting of the narrative on my own terms. Meanwhile, my father's company limped along, diminished but surviving. He had lost 6 major contracts and, with them, the dream of expansion. I heard through industry chatter that he was attending therapy, looking worn down and quieter than I'd ever known him. It was too little, too late, but perhaps the first step in him facing the truth. My mother doubled down on her bitterness. She told anyone who would listen that I was ungrateful, selfish, and poisoned by money, but most people had seen the footage, read the think pieces, or follow the online commentary that tore apart her excuses. Screenshots of her rants often appeared on forums with captions like, "And this is why Madison left." Instead of damaging me, her words only exposed her. Sophia's marriage collapsed within 4 months. Counseling revealed the rot beneath the surface: entitlement, avoidance of responsibility, and a lifelong belief that others should provide for her. Brian's family eventually stepped in, refusing to bankroll her lifestyle. When the divorce papers were finalized, Sophia texted me, "You ruined my life. You got what you wanted." My response was the same as it had been before. I got what I earned. There's a difference. But it wasn't all bitterness. In the quiet aftermath, something unexpected bloomed. My team at Hayes Capital became my real family. We celebrated wins together, supported each other through grueling deadlines, and never once demanded I sacrifice my identity for their comfort. Marcus and his wife often invited me to their family dinners. Their daughters, both in college, looked at me with shining eyes. One of them whispered once, "You're proof we don't have to shrink ourselves for anyone." That moment, more than the promotion, more than the recognition, felt like redemption. I thought often about boundaries. About how, for decades, I'd been told that family should always come first, even if it meant burning myself to keep them warm. But the truth was simpler, sharper. Blood doesn't make you family. Respect does. Success isn't something you owe to those who never believed in you. And peace, your own peace, is worth more than their approval. One afternoon, I received a letter from a former colleague I'd barely known. She wrote that she'd watched the livestream the night of the wedding, saw me refuse to hand over my home, and realized she too had been letting her family strip her of her independence. Your moment gave me courage to leave, she wrote. I'm safe now, thank you. Tears blurred the words as I read them. That letter became proof that standing my ground wasn't just about me. It was about everyone who had ever been cornered by those who claimed to love them. So here's what I learned. Sometimes the hardest battles are with the people who should protect you most. Sometimes love is twisted into obligation, and obligation into chains. But you don't have to wear those chains. You can walk away. You can choose yourself. My penthouse, once a symbol of independence, had become something more, a sanctuary, a daily reminder that I had carved out a life no one could take from me. Every sunrise through those windows whispered the same truth: you chose you, Madison, and that was enough. If you're reading this, and you've been told your boundaries are selfish, remember this: boundaries are not walls. They are doors, doors that open to peace, self-respect, and freedom. You don't owe anyone your hard-earned achievements simply because you share DNA. So I'll ask you now, what boundaries do you need to set today? If you've ever had to choose between family approval and self-respect, know this: you are not alone. Comment boundaries matter if you believe in protecting yourself from toxic expectations. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it's okay to choose themselves. And as for me, I'll keep standing at these windows, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over the city I helped build, grateful every day for the peace I fought to protect. My story isn't about a slap or a penthouse. It's about finally realizing my worth.